my dear scoliosis warriors. In this video I'm sharing with you the absolute basics I think everyone should know about their scoliosis. Hi, my name is Veronika. I'm a yoga for scoliosis teacher, and welcome to Scoli Space, my YouTube channel about scoliosis and yoga for scoliosis. This video is a workshop recording of a workshop I've done in the past, and this is part 2. So when you like this part, make sure to watch the other 2 as well. And in this video, you will learn what is scoliosis. I will explain what is the difference between concave and convex, which you might have heard about before. I will also talk about how to move with scoliosis, and I'll share some do's and don'ts and some basic information about moving with fusion. And then we'll also dive into flexibility versus mobility and some other issues which are very often connected with scoliosis. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's dive in. The first slide is not really super important, but it's just to kind of start tuning into the anatomy of scoliosis. And so the X-ray, which is on the left, which is on its own, kind of standing on its own, it's actually my X-ray. It's quite old. I think I got it when I was, is it my first X-ray? I think I was 15 then. And I'll be using this X-ray a lot, so you'll get to see it. And I just included those other 2 X-rays, just to see different shapes of how scoliosis can look. Having an X-ray is super useful for understanding your scoliosis. So very often with my clients, if they have an X-ray, I really like to work with it because it just gives you a really good idea of where things are. And of course, if you don't have the X-ray, it doesn't mean that you can't learn about your scoliosis, and there are other ways how you can work with it and find out. So definitely it doesn't mean that it's totally necessary, but for me, I think it's just the easiest way and easiest option, having the X-ray. Of course, it's very important to look at it from the right side. So really knowing if you're looking at the X-ray from the front or from the back, because of course the curvature would appear totally different. So that's super important. But I think also when you take a picture of your back and your scoliosis isn't really like very, very mild, so that it's hard to see, then you can also see it from the picture of your back, and you will get to see it in a moment when I switch my slide. Just to kind of point out these X-rays, you can see the X-ray in the middle is kind of like a thoracolumbar scoliosis, so it's coming, but it's also kind of coming into the cervical spine. So that's just one shape, but then there's a completely other shape with like when the spine is almost completely straight, and then when it comes to the lumbar area, so to the lower part of the spine, then the curve appears there. And it's very important to realize that actually with scoliosis, there is usually, or there is never just one curve. Often it can happen that when you have like a thoracolumbar scoliosis, which is coming from your thoracic into your lumbar spine, then of course that will be your main curve. But there will be always compensation curves, because when the spine curves, the other part of the spine just compensates to kind of even it out and to put the head approximately in the middle and in the straight position, because our brain doesn't like it when it's kind of, in a weird position when it's not parallel to the ground. So that's one way to put it and one way to explain it. And let's move to the other slide. Again, me. This is a while ago, though. I think this was the first picture of my back I shared on Instagram. You can see how it can look when someone has an X-ray like me, and then how the back and how the posture can look. So now this is what I would like you to do actually also sometime when you have time for it. Then if you have an X-ray, then take the X-ray and also make someone take a picture of you when you are kind of in a relaxed position, not really like intentionally slouching and collapsing, but just, how you stand or how you sit when you don't put any attention to your posture. So when you're not intentionally trying to correct yourself. And then you can get quite a good idea about where things are. So if you look at these pictures now, I have highlighted the concave and convex side. So you can see with red color, I highlighted the concave sides, and with blue color, I highlighted the convex sides. And I know it can be quite confusing in the beginning, especially if you're not familiar with these terms and with this terminology. So I have a quite simple way how to remember this. And I always think of the concave side like a cave, you know. I have like this memotechnical little help. So I always imagine that the concave side is like this side, which is inside of a cave. So that makes then the inside of the curve concave and the outside of the curve is convex. And it's super important that you remember this, although I will remind you of this when we need it. But for the practical part, it will be very useful if you know. And I will continue talking about this. So there is a picture of my back. I think this was like 4 years ago or something. And here you can see it very well. So if you imagine the X-ray kind of put on my back, you can see that my major curve is a lumbar curve, so in the lower part of my spine, in my lower back. And the right side, looking at my back, is concave. So you can see it's kind of sinking in and also kind of being a little bit squeezed together, crushed together. And you can see the other side, which is the convex side. So the convex side is the side toward which my spine is curving and toward which it wants to go, kind of. And there you can very often see and feel those overworked muscles. So if you were here yesterday, maybe you remember how I was talking about pain and the muscle spasms. So the convex side, as you can see it here in the picture, the left one, where you can also kind of see those bulky muscles and the bigger muscles, those are the overworked muscles. And this is something which hurts me when I am lazy and when I'm not doing my exercises. Luckily, it's less and less as my posture is improving. But still, sometimes, you know, it's always one of the first spots which reminds me that I haven't been moving for too long and I better get moving. So this is the place where it's very likely to get those muscle spasms, so the muscles can hurt. And this is simply because the muscle is carrying way too much load. It's carrying way more than it should be carrying. So the muscles on this side are overworked, and the muscles on the concave side, so on the right side, they are just really weak and tight. They can be tight and shortened. Yeah, so this is kind of the main, or like the basic categorizing, I would say. Let's move forward to the next slide. So here is still the same picture you can see which I shared with you before, so the one on the left, and the one on the right is just a couple of seconds after that. So that was already a time when I was starting to be aware of my posture, and I was, thanks to yoga, I was getting a better sense of where my body is in place, or in space is a better word. And I was kind of already starting to be aware of what I need to do to improve my posture. So you can see that I already was kind of moving my waistline and my my convex side, so the side of my curve, I was moving it more to the center to kind of center myself and put my spine into a more neutral position, which is something I mentioned yesterday, right? If you remember, where I told you that you should exercise, or when you exercise, when you move, your main aim should be to put your spine into a neutral position, or as neutral as you can. So this is something I was doing, and you can see also my shoulders were kind of evening up a little more. So that's just an example of, yeah, how basically quickly you can improve your posture if you already kind of know and feel your body. And of course, it might take some time until you really put it into the system and until the body really gets used to it, and also until the muscles are strong enough to hold it up in long term. So I just wanted to share that with you. So we'll continue to another slide. And this is just a little bit more of improvement. So I took these pictures a year ago when I was doing a workshop here in the Czech Republic. And I was just showing kind of the progress, where if you look at these two pictures where you can see my back, actually the lower one, the one on the bottom, is the picture where I am kind of in a relaxed state and where I am not aware of my posture. And this is just how I would normally stand. So this connects very nicely to the thing I said before, where I said that if you practice and if you train the muscles to keep up the neutral position, or as close to neutral as you can get, then through time, they will kind of learn the new moving patterns and better moving patterns, and they will start to hold it up by themselves. And if you look at the picture on the top, that's where I was actively trying to correct myself. So you can see it became even a little bit better. I got my spine more to the center, and my shoulders were more evened up, and I also kind of adjusted my shoulder blades, my scapulas, because they are winging a lot, especially the one on the right side. And that's maybe just an interesting fact. If you look at my x-ray right next to the picture, you can see that even though I don't have such a curve in the thoracic spine, but I think it has changed because I have adjusted my lumbar spine and the scoliosis has kind of gone more in the thoracic spine. I plan to send it away through my head. So I'll keep you updated on that. But it's just, working on my alignment from bottom to top. So now I think my scapula is winging even a little bit more because my spine is pushing more to the side, and it's kind of messing a little bit with the alignment of the body there. Jude is saying that I look great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that she can barely tell that I have it. Yeah, and that's the thing, it's even though maybe you might not be able to make your spine straight, and I think this is thing which we shouldn't be focused on, or it shouldn't be our main aim to kind of make the spine straight. But like I said yesterday, it's about improving the quality of life, improving the posture, and just improving altogether how you feel, that you don't have pain, and that you can really live a happy and pain-free life. So I think those are the best kind of aims and goals for scoliosis. And then of course, it's nice if along the way, your curve improves. That's great. But I think it's not ideal to kind of really focus only on the numbers and then just, that be the only thing to focus on. So this is an improvement which you can really see. And I know many people are self-conscious about their scoliosis because they just are kind of freaked out by the way how it looks and that everyone sees it, and that, they're just really self-conscious about how their body looks. And so I just want to show you that this is the improvement I have achieved in a quite short time. So if you would look at those pictures, I think it's maybe 1.5 years in between those pictures. And who follows me on Instagram, they know the pictures I share now. So, but I've been a little bit lousy on my workouts lately, so it's not such a big improvement, but I'm playing a lot with the derotation currently, which I'm finding quite fascinating. And so we will dive into that soon, of course. Jude Elizabeth is saying that she has a pretty big rib hump and that she would love to be able to minimize. Yeah, I totally understand. And I mean, that's the downside of having a curve in your thoracic spine, because so yeah, that's actually maybe a good point to start talking about the rotation. So I already told you that the spine, when it makes a curve, it kind of curves to the side, and then you can see on my example that there is a compensation curve in the thoracic area, just to kind of try to center out the position of the head, the position of the brain. And this is not the only thing that happens with scoliosis. So it's super, super important to realize that scoliosis is not two-dimensional, but it's actually three-dimensional. So what I want to say with this is that if you look at the X-ray, you just see it flat. So you just see, okay, this kind of S shape or C shape or whatever. But what you don't see in the X-ray is that the spine also rotates. And I think that's super important to know. And that is definitely a very important aspect to work with. So because the spine, in order to curve, to create the curve, it also has to rotate. Otherwise, it's just not possible to create the curve, right? So as the spine rotates, it also creates these shapes with the ribs on your back, for example. So the infamous rib hump and so on. Also, for example, for me, on my chest, I know that one of my sides is kind of coming more forward, the left one, and the right one is kind of a little bit sinking in. And this is quite interesting also for women, because I know many people with, or there are many women with scoliosis, men probably not because they don't have breasts. But I've heard of actually some women getting their breasts adjusted who had scoliosis because they thought that one breast is way bigger than the other one. But what is actually the truth is that just because your spine twists, then one side comes more forward than the other one. And this is what it causes for the breasts to look different, but actually they're not that different. So that's just maybe something interesting, just like a fun fact about scoliosis. Although I get that it can be quite annoying, but I have the same, so, and I think it's not that bad. So let's continue. Yeah. Here you can see the natural shapes of the spine. And so on the right, you can see that this is kind of how a normal spine without scoliosis would look from the back. So it's completely straight when you look at the spine from the back. But if you look at the spine from the side, you see these natural curves. And it's important to say that these natural curves are super important for a healthy spine and for a functional spine. And I know many people say like, yeah, I have lordosis or I have kyphosis, but it's important to realize that this is natural. And practically when they are saying it, what they probably mean is that they have hyperlordosis and hyperkyphosis. And we'll talk about this in a minute. So if you look at the picture, you can see that the spine starts with cervical lordosis. And I will not show it on me because all of my curves are messed up. I will talk about it in a minute. The neutral shape of the neck should be lordosis. So also I could say concave. Then kyphosis, thoracic kyphosis. So a little bit of rounding in your back between your shoulder blades is natural. Or you could say also it's convex. And then lumbar lordosis. So your lumbar spine coming gently a little bit kind of inside your body. And then kyphosis, which is just kind of the sacrum and those former vertebrae just grown together into the sacrum. I know that very often people with scoliosis, for example, have a flat back, and I will talk about it a little bit later. But I'll just get into these shapes I wanted to talk about. So remember, just this is the natural shape of the spine, if you look at it from the side. And of course, the scoliosis changes this a little bit too. So I'm just gonna hop on to the next slide. And here you can see those different shapes. So if you just look at this woman, on the first picture, she is just showing the hyperlordosis. So she's exaggerating her posture just to show this extreme version of the arching in the lower back. And it's definitely not healthy. Yeah, so this is a thing which happens very often with lumbar scoliosis, and I used to have that quite a lot as well. So this was the main reason why my lower back was hurting often, or when I was, for example, standing for a long time, my back would hurt a lot. And this is just because of the lumbar scoliosis. So, sorry, lumbar, yeah, of course, lumbar scoliosis, but what I wanted to say is lumbar hyperlordosis. So a bigger lordosis, a bigger inward curvature than is normal. And why the pain comes is just simply, you know, the spine starts to crush and to really squeeze the intervertebral discs, and also just other parts of the body are messed up. The muscles, again, on your back are overworked in an unhealthy way. And this is something which happens. So the hyperlordosis, many people have that. Yeah, even people who don't have scoliosis, many people have it. We with scoliosis, it's actually because, again, of the rotation. So I'm really looking forward to buying this spine one day where I can demonstrate to my students, but I don't have the spine right now, so we just need to use our imagination. So as the spine creates the curve in the lumbar area, it rotates. And as it rotates, it kind of creates more of a lordosis. So it creates more of an arching inward. And this is why many people who have lumbar scoliosis have also lumbar hyperlordosis. So I hope you understand. I hope I'm not speaking too fast and that it's not too confusing for you. Let me know if you have any questions or if something is not clear to you. Feel free to comment and ask, and I will get to it. And here we will take a look at the other picture. So this is the woman in the middle, and she is exaggerating her kyphosis. So she's showing a position of hyper-kyphosis. And this is, for example, what some people with thoracic scoliosis have. I know one client of mine definitely has it, but not necessarily. So I just wanted to show you. But what I see more often is that people have actually a flat thoracic spine. And I will show you an example of that in a minute. But here, as we move to the last picture, this is an X-ray of someone who looks like they have hyperlordosis, definitely. So you can see their lumbar spine is diving quite deep into their body. And you can see also that the edges of the vertebrae are kind of pushing on their intervertebral discs. And if you keep this position, or like, I know it's not really position, it's not a great word, but if you keep this posture and this body alignment in a long term, like for years and years, then it can create disc herniation. Yeah, so as the vertebrae are pushing on the intervertebral discs, it can happen that some of the discs kind of pop out a little bit, and then it can be quite uncomfortable because it can be pushing on some nerves, and it might even need surgery, but sometimes it's possible to fix it without surgery, but it will forever stay kind of a little bit fragile once it pops out. And I think the people, not the people, but the person here on the X-ray looks like they have a little bit of hyperkyphosis, so in the thoracic spine going on too. So yeah, here you can see very well what happens for many people with scoliosis. And that's again me and my back. And I wanted to focus on the kind of a dip in between my shoulder blades. So especially the picture with the blue dress looks quite scary. It's just like my spine is dipping inside of my body, and it should be doing the opposite. So if you remember the healthy curves of the spine, it should kind of do like a kyphosis, so it should be coming out a little bit. But this is just something which happens very often for people with scoliosis, because as the spine rotates, again, it comes kind of inside of the body, and this causes the spine to flatten. So many people who have scoliosis actually have a flat back, especially in the thoracic area, because of their scoliosis curve. You can see also my winging scapulas there, and you can see that my scapula on the right has a tendency to kind of be winging more. So it's kind of more disconnecting from my trunk, from my ribs. This is something we do a lot also with my clients, like working on the shoulder blades and kind of stabilizing them and working on strengthening the muscles which need to be worked on to put the scapulas back in place. Now, you know what's funny? Because so usually, like if I teach people who don't have scoliosis, which I'm doing less and less, but if I teach people who don't have scoliosis, very often they have an exaggerated kyphosis. So that means they are rounding their thoracic spine way too much. And so I'm teaching them to kind of neutralize it. But for me, when I'm at home, I practice rounding my back because I need it. And sometimes it hurts also. And when I practice kind of like rounding my back, so kind of practicing to increase the kyphosis in my thoracic spine in some specific forward bends, then it helps me a lot. So it's quite funny that what I have to teach most of my clients to get rid of, I have to practice to kind of improve it. This is me again, and this is when I was kind of starting with practicing yoga. And yeah, I just can't look at that picture. It just hurts me looking at it. That's terrible. Anyway, what I want to address in this slide is that many people who have scoliosis have also hypermobility or are hypermobile. And if you were here yesterday, you know that I talked about that people who are hypermobile, their joints tend to be kind of softer very often, and they can have these funny elbows like I showed yesterday, or even knees which go further than they should go. And also I think there's a hypermobility test where you kind of show how far you can bend your finger. I think mine is not that creepy. I've seen way creepier ones. But you know, the issue with people who are hypermobile, and very often people who have scoliosis are hypermobile, is that they're kind of drawn to yoga and to other kind of flexibility exercises. And I'm not saying yoga is mainly about flexibility, but the unfortunate thing is that modern yoga really promotes a lot of flexibility, and everyone who is kind of able to be more and more flexible, that is adored, and it's kind of being seen as really great. But actually it's not that great, especially for people who are hypermobile, because they go way further than it is healthy for them to go in their joints. And I think maybe I've even read an article about this, but that there can be a connection between actually scoliosis and hypermobility in a sense that even because your spine is kind of also connected with joints, right? Each vertebrae has these joints in between them, and the intervertebral discs. And it is said that also these connections between the spine are softer, and this is why it's kind of easier for the spine to curve and to move into an unusual way. So this is something I wanted to mention. So yeah, if you look at this picture, you can see that probably back bending like this is not very healthy for me. You can see I'm going way too deep into my shoulders. And also you can see very well my scoliosis here. So you can see the concave side on the right side. And it's also bringing me to the rotation, because here in the picture, maybe you're not able to see it, but if you focus on it a lot, you can see that the right ribs are kind of coming forward. The ribs should be a little bit more back, right? So this shows how these gestures are not very helpful, I guess, but my chest and my ribs, I just rotate it in this way, and I will show you soon in a more practical way. So when I'm going into a back bend, and I'm not practicing back bends anymore right now, so you can see I'm just exacerbating my thoracic already flat spine. I'm going even deeper, and I'm exacerbating my concavity. I'm collapsing into the concavity, and just, you know, doing poses like this is not helpful in any way. One more thing to point out before we move on is, and I already tackled it yesterday a little bit, flexibility versus mobility. So what we want is not necessarily being super flexible, but we want to be mobile, which means like we want to have functional movement. We want to be able to move our joints and our body in different ways, but we also want the body to be supported by the muscles. So it's always important to have this support, especially for us with scoliosis. Let's dive into a little bit of do's and don'ts with scoliosis. And before I start talking about this, I really want you to remember that what I said yesterday, and that was, it doesn't really matter that much what you do, but how you do it. That is super important. And while I will give you some advice here, it's always super individual, and it really depends on how you feel in those poses and how well and functionally you can move into them. And I know many people who have scoliosis, and they're even yoga teachers, and they practice back bends and twists and everything, and I used to do too, and they feel perfectly fine in them. And they even feel like they're learning from them, and that they're kind of helping them to explore their body and to learn how to work with it better. So just a little intro. On the other hand, I'm definitely not advising for beginners to do poses like this. So let's just see, look at those different things. So very often, and especially from stress therapists, you can hear that people with scoliosis shouldn't do side bends, they shouldn't do forward bends, they shouldn't do back bends, and that they shouldn't do twists. And then you're there like, okay, so should I move like a robot or what? Like this is a little bit weird. And I totally understand that. So the thing is that it's super important how you do it. So when I was practicing yoga without awareness of my curve, I was kind of exacerbating my curves, and it wasn't really great for me. On the other hand, I believe it was still better than not moving at all. Okay, so I think it's really important to observe how you move, and think and see and work on how you can move in a better way and in a more effective way. I'll just show you some examples. So I'll just move this a little bit more to my yoga mat so that you can see better. Lorena is saying people with scoliosis should not do anything. Yeah, that's what most stress therapists say. And I don't like to say this because it's just, you know, important that people know that they actually can move. And I think it's super important to teach them how they can move in a better and more functional way. So if I just go into a seated pose, just to show you some side bends, and I think I'll just take off my top for this so that you can see better, and I can show you on my curvature. So if I just turn my back to you, you can maybe see why if I go into a side bend like this, it's not really great for me, right? I'm collapsing into my lumbar curve, I'm closing up and squeezing my concave side, and I'm just exacerbating the curve and overstretching the side which is already overstretched. So if I want to go into a side bend, I would more do it, for example, like this. So I would work on keeping my concave side open, and I would work on kind of bringing my convex side back to the middle, and to kind of then open the concavity here in my thoracic area. Okay, so that's an example with a side bend. Then we have forward bends. When you kind of hang passively, of course, it kind of exacerbates the curves if you're not used to adjusting them. But for example, when I practice a forward bend, I just again
work on neutralizing my posture. So first I would start like in straight one, where I'm trying to lengthen my spine as much as I can. And then I would derotate, and I will talk about this in a moment. And then, for example, I like to just walk my arms forward and to kind of get as much lengthening as I can. If you can't put your arms on the ground, that's perfectly fine. You can just put them on the chair, on a counter, on a wall, whatever. You can just really get creative with props. And yeah, so to the back bends, it's very similar. If you remember the picture I showed you where I was kind of collapsing into, or right, this, when I was collapsing into the puppy pose. So again, it's not really great for my spine and for my back if I do a pose like this, you know, but I would rather again focus on the length, and we will do this pose together later. So I would just again focus on keeping my spine in a neutral position and my trunk in a neutral position, on derotation, on elongation of my spine, and then kind of getting some traction there. So I'm kind of pulling with my pelvis away so that I can get some lengthening and space in my spine. And with the back bends, I would definitely not advise them for complete beginners. And if you would like to practice them, I would definitely practice them first with a teacher who is experienced in scoliosis and who knows what they're doing. And then they can give you some specific tips how you can do it in a safe way. What I have learned is that for back bends especially, it is super important to engage your legs and your glutes in a specific way so that you are supported and that you are not collapsing into the lumbar spine, but you're really holding it stable here. And then another factor is super important is to create length again in the body. So before you start bending back, you first need to create space, length, and again, put the spine into a neutral position or as neutral as you can. And let's address a last thing, twists. So twisting, I think gentle twisting can be great for scoliosis. But again, advanced twisting, I wouldn't really advise if you are just a beginner and if you're not sure where your curves are and what to do with your body. I would first definitely try to practice more gentle twists. Like you can just sit on a chair and work on kind of twisting like this and seeing how you can keep the length and how you can work on derotation of your spine instead. Yeah. For example, if you would twist, then you would twist more to one side because it allows you to derotate the ribs, right? This is a topic I could talk about for hours, so I can't really dive deeper into this. I hope it gives you an idea. And one last thing maybe I want to mention is moving with fusion. So if you have a fused spine, there it is really super important to observe the limits of where your spine lets you go and where the rods let you move. So you definitely don't want to push it anywhere too far. I know back bending is not really great. And for example, also deep twists are also not really a thing you want to do. You can do gentle twists, of course, but just kind of observing how far you can go so that it's beneficial and that you are not pushing against the rods and against the titanium things you have in your spine. One more thing I wanted to say, yeah, for forward bends, it's the same like for other people with scoliosis. You want to find length, and what is super important for people with fusion is to learn how to kind of bend forward from their hips. So they're not bending forward from the spine, like they're not rounding the spine, but they're kind of working on bending from the hips, which really helps. And actually everyone should learn how to do this because it's way healthier for your spine and for your back, especially if you're lifting up something, and if you're just carrying something heavy, then it's way better to lift it from the hips.
I hope you enjoyed my workshop and that you found it valuable, that you learned something new, and most of all, that you finally understand what is scoliosis and how to move so that it's beneficial for you. If you enjoyed it and learned something new, make sure to like this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them here in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer them if I can. And if you would like to start moving with scoliosis, but you are not sure how, I've created the perfect resource for you. It's called Scoli Space. It's my scoliosis membership, where we will dive into moving with scoliosis. You will understand your unique curvature and how to adjust your movement practice. And there's also practice videos for everyday practice. There is also a monthly live class with me where I'll be happy to see you and guide you. So if you find it interesting, you can join it. The link is under this video. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of the other videos I'm preparing for you. And that's it from me today. Thank you for spending time with me, and I'll be happy to see you in the next video. Bye bye.